Now verification wise, you verify line configuration. So how have you configured your ASA or iOS device to log messages at which destinations and at which severity level? Show logging. That command is going to also show the buffer if you log to the buffer as well. And if you have configured logging for VTI lines and you want the log messages to show up lively on the VTI lines, it means you gotta from a SSH or telnet session, you have to say terminal monitor. So if logging at the VTI lines is configured and enabled, and you go to that device, you SSH that device, you do some kind of debugging, and let's say that the VTI lines configuration allows for logging debugging to be showed to show up. Unless you say terminal monitor is not going to show up, and that's for let's say safety or security reasons. So let's say that router tree is configured. That at the VTI lines, which means monitor logging, to log severity level 7, which means pretty much all messages. So if you say logging debugging at the monitor, it means the monitor is going to receive, the VTI lines are going to receive all kind of messages from that router. But it makes sense that once you, let's say from PCB, you SSH into router 3 and you do a debug, it's not going to show by default the outputs, even though configuration wise it's supported. Because imagine that on that device it's 55 engineers connected, or 100, or doesn't matter how many. You wouldn't want the router to send those log messages out to all of those engineers, right? Maybe it's not relevant for all of them. So that's why from this session, if you want to see the logging showing up at the VTI lines at your SSH or telnet session, you gotta go on the on router 3, and from that session you gotta say terminal monitor, which means show me at the terminal, because I'm using a terminal to connect to router 3, which means an SSH or telnet client. Terminal monitor means show me the monitor messages, which means VTI messages at this session only. And at that point, router 3 is gonna show the VTI messages, the monitor messages, only to PCB and not to every other SSH session or user connected to router 3. And it makes sense. It's for safety and security reasons. Okay, now configuration wise, so what I'm going to be doing is server A is going to be used as a syslog server, and I'm going to make router 2 and ASH3 log to server A. And of course on both ASH3 and router 2, I'm going to disable console logging temporarily. Actually, I made this later. This is being class. Let's say console logging is going to be at the level of 6, and VTI logging, monitor logging is going to be at level of 6. Buffer logging is going to be disabled. I don't want to log in the buffer. Disable, let's say. And syslog logging is going to be a level of 7, which means debugging. Let's go ahead and do that. So on router 2 and on ASH3 as well, we see logging on, turn on logging. We see logging constant informational, I said. Logging monitor, I said informational likewise. Logging buffer, disable. No logging buffer. Logging trap. This means to a syslog server. Host. Logging trap, I said debugging. And logging host It's gonna be 172.16.10.100. So I'm saying again, I enable logging to begin with, at the console informational, at the VTI lines informational, at the buffer disabled, at a syslog server debugging level, and then I configure one or multiple syslog servers. If you say show logging, I say clear logging, clear the buffer, because I just disabled logging to the buffer, show logging. So it states that syslog logging is enabled to begin with, then console logging informational, monitor logging informational, buffer disabled, and trap logging, syslog logging, debugging, and only to the server following using the default UDP port of 514 in there. Let's also go on ASA3, do the same via SDM configuration. Let's do a refresh in here. And if we go to, should be under device setup. If it's not there, should be under device management, probably. And there we go, logging setup. So we enable logging in here. Logging to buffer, I'm going to disable it. I'm going to put nothing in there. Buffer size, let me say close this. No. Let me say refresh again. Let's put to begin with syslog servers, syslog setup, syslog servers. So let's say add. On the interface, on which interface is the syslog server reachable? Is reachable on this interface of gig0091, which is the server interface of the SA. The IP address of the syslog server 172.16.10.100. I'm using a default UDP port. I'm going to say OK. Apply. Syslog setup. I want to, this is something else. I don't need this for basic functionality. And then logging setup, enable logging. Buffer size is going to be, let's say, 0 bytes. And apply. I can disable logging at the buffer. Let's go under the CLI and do this. Show run include logging. So let's change this manually. The CLI logging console. I said informational. Logging. On the SLA, let's put it as disabled at the console because I'm going to see a lot of messages. No logging console. Logging monitor informational. Logging buffer, no logging buffer, which is the default. No logging buffered. And logging trap, I said debugging. And logging host, I have configured the host already. Show run include logging. So I enable to log at a server at a level of debugging. I've enabled logging. To verify show logging. So what I'm saying is that syslog logging is enabled. Console logging is disabled. Monitor is informational as expected. Buffer is disabled. SDM mail is disabled. And trap logging is debugging to server A. Let's say refresh now. And now if we go on server A and start up the syslog server, let's go on the iOS on router 2 and let's generate the log message. Should be good enough. So the log message in here is type sys and this is a level of 5. And it says that it's configuration about configuration. If we say conf t and we say interface loopback 0 shutdown, this is likewise a type 5 severity, severity level. It's of type link has changed and line protocol is down. It's 2 log messages, both of them with a severity level of 5. No shutdown. Now I'm not sure if the server started. Let me open up another copy. Is already running. Let me try and open up another server. I'm gonna go on the services and I want to stop the Kiwi syslog server. So I can open up the other syslog server. Although it says that it cannot start syslog because another service is running, but it's no service running syslog. TFTP syslog port. Let's say netstat. See if the syslog port is open. Netstat minus AN and say find 514. It's minus AN. There we go. Find. So it seems that somebody is listening on that port. And I'm not sure which application I have installed which listens because I have no other applications installed. Let me go back to the services and make sure I stop the Kiwi syslog server. Let me say properties and disable it fully. So something still listens on that port number. Okay, let me quickly reboot the machine. It's a VM. It should come up in just a couple of seconds. Because there should be no other service running syslog. Okay, while this happens, let me show you what I was trying to say with the terminal monitor. So on router 2 I said show logging. And at the monitor, I'm saying informational. So if I say telnet to myself, I'm on a telnet session. Telnet, let's say show run section line to see what is the authentication I'm using currently on the line VTIs. It is local password, and let's put a password. Password Cisco. And let's say privilege 15 for the moment. So once I'm authenticated, I want a level of 15 associated. Telnet myself. Cisco. As you can see, I'm at the monitor. If I say interface do back 0, I'm at a telnet session and I say shutdown. Well, I have killed myself, right? Shutdown. Not a smart thing for me to do. Disconnect 1. Let me connect again. No shutdown. So telnet myself 5552. Show run interface do back 0. And no shutdown. And let's turn again to myself. To another address 38.2. Cisco. And if I say conft interface do back 0 shutdown or no shutdown, I see nothing in there. Even though logging is enabled properly for the VTN lines. You gotta say from exec mode terminal monitor, which makes sense is from exec mode, but it's not, because it's not a command which is gonna stick in the configuration. So terminal monitor, if I say now conft and I say interface do back 0 shutdown, I should see a log message. There we go. So at the VTN lines, for safety and security reasons, you have to say terminal monitor to be able to see the log messages as logging monitor is configured. Because as I stated, if 100 user has connected, the router is going to be too busy to replicate a log message out to all the 100 consoles by default. So that's why each user individually has to enable seeing the messages lively in there. Let's go back on our server. And let's say Cisco 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's see again if syslog is open. So netstat minus an find 514. So it seems that there's not an application which is running, listening on that port, and it's not clearly to me which one is it. Let's make sure the syslog service is disabled still. Let's open up Kiwi again to see if this is still using the port, because I have no other software installed in this computer which should use the syslog server syslog port by default. Still, of course, we can go on the devices. And do a debug to see that it is gonna send a log message to the syslog server. Kiwi syslog free version, okay, no problem. Let's quickly restart Kiwi and reopen it. Let's say enable, see if it allows us to enable the service. Automatic, apply and start. Okay, it should open up. Let's say start. Already running. Okay, view. Unable to open UDP socket, so it's something else which is running. Not sure which other service is running because I have not a software installed. So what we can do is we can go on router 2. So show running to logging. And you can say debug. Debug, let's say show logging. Well, of course we can, if we go into logging in their option, we should see, of course, that there we go. It says that to that destination I have 157 messages lines logged. So this confirms it works. If I'm gonna do a shot again on the loopback, I'm not gonna spend time continue investigating a problem on that server shutdown, which is 2 more messages and no shutdown, which is 2 more messages. If we say do show logging again, now it shows up 161 messages lines logged, which is 4 messages more. So this confirms it works. Likewise on DSA, if we say show logging, it says that amount of messages have been logged to the destination. And of course, if we say, if we initiate a session through DSA, which is gonna generate a new log message. So if you initiate a new session through DSA, something like, for example, a telnet or a ping from PC from what, from router 2, a ping from router 2 to ICE, then new log messages are going to be generated and sent to the syslog server. So let's go to router 2 and ping the ICE server. Repeat 100. If we go to DSA, so initially we had sent to the syslog server 312 messages, 1312 messages. If you say show logging again, it changed over to 284 messages logged. So it confirms it works, but I cannot show you that for whatever reason my server runs a service which I'm not sure exactly which service is blocking, is keeping the syslog server enabled in there. But as I said, what you can do on the SA additionally, which is going to help you troubleshoot a lot of issues lively. So SDM is a very good tool for logging purposes, for troubleshooting. So username ASDM user and ASDM pass. You can go to the logging tab, to the monitoring tab, enable ASDM logging, and of course you can do a lot of filtering in there, because DSA, as you can see, logs a lot of messages back and forth for each session being generated to DSA. Like for example, when a connection was denied for whatever reason, it has a severity level of 6, and the message number is 106015. When a TCP session was teared down gracefully, it has a severity level of 6, but a message number of 32014. Like when a TCP request discard, what happened, it has a severity level of 7 with a message event number of 710005. So SA does a lot of logging back and forth for everything which happens through the SA. So if you want to, if something happens, if you want to troubleshoot something and look at the log messages in the buffer, is going to be too difficult to do that, and especially they rotate. So ideally what you do, you go and under SDM, you go to monitoring, and you go to logging, of course, and then to not to log buffer but to real-time log viewer, and you say enable logging, which means enable logging as ASDM. Okay, so logging ASDM information is going to be by default. You can change that around. Send. So there you go. You can say what is the level and say view. Of course, ideally you change the buffer limit, you increase the buffer limit. If you want to see a lot of log messages, you make it, you put it a higher value in there, and you say view. So it supports maximum 2000 in this code. And you say view. And you see pretty much everything which happens on the SA live in here. And of course, the advantage of using the SDM against the live logging on the CLI is that you can easily filter by whatever you want. Like if you believe that is an attack happening from whatever source, whatever destination, then you can build a filter to see only those log messages on the SA. Like for example, I'm going to build a filter by source IP address, let's say from 172.16.10.100, and only if destination port is 53, for example. So I build a filter and I say then filter, and it should show me only those kind of messages back and forward from the on the SDM, which probably because server A doesn't send any kind of DNS messages. I see nothing. Let's clear the filter, so you show all again. And for example, let's say filter, build filter actually, only if destination port is 23. Doesn't matter what the source is. So I want to filter based only on the telnet packets. Of course, you can choose in here like equal, less than, greater, not in range, and say OK. And we filter by that filter. And now let's generate a telnet session through the ASA. So I'm going to send a telnet session, let's say from, or let's send a HTTPS session from server A to ICE, which means we're going to filter based on port 443. So not 23, but port 443. Say OK. And say filter, and let's go in here and browse to HTTPS to Cisco ICE. Session didn't work because of difficulty, whatever problem there, but the session showed up in there, as you can see. So the filter did work. The session was sent through the ASA firewall.